What if the reason your country does not yet have high-speed satellite internet is not about technology at all, but about timing, permission, and a much larger vision unfolding above your head? When we look up at the night sky, we see stars scattered across darkness, but hidden among them is a carefully designed network of satellites that represents one of the boldest connectivity missions in human history. The question is not simply how Starlink works, but how it decides where to work first. Behind every country that gains access to this powerful network lies a combination of regulatory approval, orbital positioning, strategic demand forecasting, and long-term expansion modeling. Nothing happens randomly. Every launch, every satellite deployment, and every activation zone is part of a deliberate rollout strategy engineered with precision. Governments must grant spectrum rights, telecommunications licenses, and operational clearance before service can legally begin. Without those approvals, even the most advanced satellite constellation cannot flip a switch. This is where vision meets reality. It is easy to imagine that technology alone determines progress. Yet the truth is that innovation must pass through the gates of policy, law, and infrastructure readiness. SpaceX evaluates markets based on population density, broadband gaps, economic viability, and regulatory cooperation. Some countries move quickly, understanding the benefits of expanded connectivity for rural regions, education systems, and economic growth. Others move cautiously, navigating complex policy frameworks or protecting existing telecommunication structures. The variation in availability across regions is not a sign of favoritism, but a reflection of legal processes and orbital mathematics. Satellites must be positioned in sufficient density to guarantee stable coverage, and ground stations must be established to link space-based signals to terrestrial networks. These decisions are calculated using real-world data, not speculation. Each launch adds capacity, but capacity must align with authorized territories. This careful balance reveals a deeper lesson about ambition and execution. Elon Musk has often emphasized that building the future requires not only bold ideas, but relentless problem-solving within constraints. The expansion of Starlink demonstrates that principle in motion. A grand mission to connect the globe still depends on paperwork, partnerships, and patience. The rollout strategy mirrors a philosophical truth about achievement. You cannot skip steps simply because your vision is large. Progress moves at the speed of preparation meeting opportunity. As more satellites enter orbit, more nations complete approvals, and more infrastructure comes online. The map of availability expands. For viewers trying to understand why one region activates before another, the answer lies in this intersection of regulation and orbital prioritization. The sky may appear limitless, but access is earned through alignment between innovation and authorization. When you grasp that concept, you begin to see Starlink not just as an internet service, but as a living example of how transformative ideas must navigate real-world systems before they change lives. At this point, you might think the path is straightforward. Launch more satellites, secure more approvals, and coverage naturally expands. But the reality is far more complex and far more suspenseful than it appears from the ground. Beneath the surface of every activation announcement lies a silent race against time, orbital mechanics, and competitive pressure. Satellites do not simply float aimlessly waiting for instructions. They travel at extraordinary speeds, arranged in carefully calculated shells and inclinations that determine which latitudes receive stronger signals first. Orbital prioritization means that certain regions gain stable capacity sooner because the constellation density above them reaches operational thresholds earlier. This is not favoritism. It is physics combined with phased deployment. When SpaceX studies real-world data, it evaluates bandwidth demand, projected subscriber growth, regulatory stability, and ground station feasibility. A country might approve service quickly, yet without enough satellites passing overhead at optimal angles, the user experience would suffer. On the other hand, a region with ideal orbital coverage but delayed licensing remains inactive until paperwork aligns with infrastructure. This tension creates a strategic puzzle that must be solved with precision. There is also the matter of capacity management. Each satellite has finite throughput, and each cell on the ground can support only a certain number of users before speeds decline. If activation occurs too early in a high-demand region, performance may drop, damaging long-term trust. If activation occurs too late, competitors may capture the market. The balance requires disciplined timing. Here is where the suspense deepens. Every rocket launch carries not just hardware, but expectations from millions of potential users waiting for connectivity in remote villages, mountainous terrain, islands, and underserved rural communities. Delays in manufacturing, weather conditions affecting launches, international policy shifts, or spectrum disputes can alter timelines overnight. Expansion is not a straight line. It is a dynamic process shaped by global variables. Yet within that uncertainty lies a powerful lesson about strategic patience. Elon Musk often speaks about thinking in first principles, breaking problems down to their fundamental truths rather than copying existing models. Starlink's rollout reflects that mindset. Instead of following traditional telecommunications expansion patterns, the strategy builds capacity in layers, continuously adjusting based on real-time performance data. Heat maps of usage, latency measurements, and network congestion reports guide where additional satellites or ground infrastructure are most urgently needed. The availability map that viewers see online is the visible tip of a massive analytical system operating behind the scenes. What feels slow to the outside world may actually be a deliberate calibration designed to ensure reliability. The suspense you feel while waiting for service mirrors the tension innovators face while building something unprecedented. They must move fast enough to lead, yet carefully enough to endure. In this way, the variation in regional availability becomes more than a technical outcome. It becomes a case study in disciplined growth under pressure, where ambition is constantly tested against operational reality, and every decision carries long-term consequences for a network meant to span the entire planet. When you step back and look at the full picture, the rollout of a global satellite network becomes more than a technical expansion plan. It becomes a mirror reflecting how progress unfolds in every ambitious pursuit. The countries that receive coverage first are not chosen by chance, and they are not chosen by favoritism, but by alignment between readiness, regulation, orbital positioning, and long-term sustainability. This alignment is the hidden principle behind every breakthrough. In life, just as in global connectivity, preparation determines timing. A nation may desire access, but without regulatory clarity and infrastructure support, activation must wait. A satellite may pass overhead, but without sufficient density and bandwidth allocation, service cannot perform at its intended standard. The lesson here extends far beyond technology. It reminds us that success is not about wishing to be first. It is about building the conditions that make being first possible. The strategic patience required to expand Starlink teaches a mindset of disciplined ambition. Vision alone does not guarantee immediate results. Execution demands coordination between engineering, policy, economics, and physics itself. When Elon Musk speaks about building systems that outlast temporary obstacles, he points toward a deeper philosophy of resilience and calculated risk. Every delayed approval, every postponed launch window, and every regulatory negotiation becomes part of a larger story of persistence. What appears to be slow movement is often steady construction happening beneath the surface. The availability map changes gradually, but behind each new activation lies thousands of decisions guided by data, strategy, and long-term thinking. For viewers trying to understand why their region is still waiting, the answer is not that they have been forgotten. The answer is that global systems scale in phases, and each phase strengthens the foundation for the next. Just as orbital shells must be filled layer by layer, personal growth happens step by step. You cannot skip altitude in space, and you cannot skip discipline in life. The variation in coverage becomes a powerful metaphor. Opportunity expands where preparation meets authorization. Instead of frustration, there is value in understanding the process. When you understand the process, you recognize that progress is happening even when you cannot immediately see the result. Satellites continue to launch. Agreements continue to form. Infrastructure continues to evolve. The horizon continues to move forward. That is the essence of visionary thinking. It is not about instant gratification. It is about sustainable transformation. As the constellation grows and more regions come online, the story of Starlink becomes proof that bold ideas can navigate complex systems and still succeed. Let that realization challenge you to examine your own ambitions with the same patience and precision. Build your foundation, align your resources, respect the constraints, then move forward with confidence, knowing that timing rewards preparation. If you are benefiting from our topics, please subscribe, like, and turn on the bell notification so you can see our new videos early.